Hello and welcome to this instructional video. In this video we're going to look at how to set up operations in the Prismatic Machining Workbench. You have been following along, doing a sequence of videos, and as you've been doing those videos you've been creating the process file for what you see in front of you on the screen. So please open that file, and again the assumption is that you are at the same place in the sequence of videos as I am here. If you recall, what has been done up until this point is we have created two setups, one for either side of the part, and inside each setup we have a manufacturing program which is empty at this moment. And then if you recall, in creating the setups, we went to double-clicking on the setup, we went through a sequence of steps to define the machine, the coordinate system, the stock, the part, fixturing elements, and the safety plane. So these were covered in a previous video. We did this for both setups, and as you can see, clicking on the second setup shows the part in the flipped orientation. We're going to focus first on the first setup. So this part should be open in front of you. What I'm going to do now is just quickly show you how one goes about adding operations to your manufacturing program now that you have created the setup with the manufacturing program in it. So let's go over here to our toolbars. I'm going to undock temporarily this second long toolbar, which is our operations toolbar, and I'm going to dock it on top and then remove it. So this is our machining operations toolbar, and on this toolbar we have all the operations that we can add to a manufacturing program. The first being a set of hole operations such as drilling, center drilling, tapping, and then as you move over to the right there's pocketing, facing, profiling, profile contouring, curve follow, and so on. The procedure that one follows to set up an operation is the same. What differs for each operation type? What really differs is the geometry one needs to pick, the cutting tool, and of course the process parameters. So I'm going to just show you the 5 steps that one has to go through in order to set up the operation. So for demonstration purposes, let's go ahead and use the curve following, which is the simplest of the operations. Let's click on this tool. Say OK here. Let's do that one more time. So click on the operation, and then you have to tell CATIA where you want that operation to go. Seeing that we have 2 setups, you need to be careful. In this case, we want to make sure that that operation goes into the first setup under the first manufacturing program. So let's click on the manufacturing program, and a couple of things happened. This dialog or input window appeared, and then if you go over to the tree, notice that there's now a plus sign next to the manufacturing program. If we expand this out, CATIA has added a tool change. So every operation, of course, requires a tool, and that tool needs to be loaded onto the machine before you can execute the operation. So if that tool is not currently the tool that was used for the previous operation, if there was one, CATIA adds a new tool change. If you expand the tool change, you'll now see the curve following operation, which matches what we're now going to set up. So focusing on this input window, you'll notice that there are 5 tabs up here on the top, and the one that is selected by default when you first create the operation is actually the second tab. And this second tab is the tab that allows you to define the geometry that the operation is going to generate. And in this example here, it's a curve follow. If you look at this drawing, you will see that these drawings typically have elements that are red, blue, and sometimes yellow. So there are different colors here, and pink too. Notice as you move your mouse over the image, these highlight in orange, meaning that these are pickable elements. And when you pick on the element, you're basically telling the input window that you want to define that particular element. So for example, for a curve follow, this line here, this red line, is actually the edge that you want to follow. So you'd want to pick geometry from the CAD model for that edge. So if I pick on this edge, so I'm going to click left click, you notice that there's something called an edge selection toolbar appears. And now I'm in the mode where I can go around and select the curves that the tool is going to follow. So I'm going to cancel this. I'm not going to go ahead and do this right now. I just want to go through the various parts of the input window for an operation first. So the first tab, the second tab is how you define the geometry. If you move over to the third tab, this is where you select the cutting tool or define the cutting tool. By default, CATIA creates a tool if one isn't present already when you create an operation, or it tries to use an appropriate tool that's already in your list. So the resource list here, this is where you start to see resources as you're building your model. You can see that there's a resource here for machine tool for the first setup, for the machine that's used for setup 1. There's also another machine definition for setup 2. And there's now a tool. This is the tool that was inserted by default when we created that curve follow operation or added that curve follow operation. We may find that we have to change the geometry of the tool, redo its definition, and that's what this third tab is for. So we're not going to do that right now. I'm just showing you where it is. The fourth tab are your process parameters. So speeds and feeds. These are often typically copied from the tool. When you set up a tool, you can define speeds and feeds there. And these are copied in by default into the process definition tab. However, there are other speeds and feeds that you need to define. One is your approach speed, which is how the tool first enters material. And then the other one is your track speed. That's how fast the tool moves out of material once the operation is completed. So even though some of these are copied in from the tool, as you can see here, there are others that you have to add. The speed, the spindle speed is also copied in here too. So that's the fourth tab. The fifth tab, this is probably the one that takes the most getting used to. This is how you lead the tool into the material and how you lead it out of the material. So these are very important moves because they determine how easily the tool engages. If you do not do this correctly, the tool can move in at a very fast rate, and the tool can be damaged as well as the workpiece. So it's very useful. It's also something that one has to do efficiently so that the tool gets into the material as quickly as possible. So there are lots of options that we will go through in future videos, but this is the fifth tab over here. And then we double back. This is a little bit strange that CATIA starts in the second tab and moves to the right, and then you double back to the first tab. That's the way it's set up. The first tab is your machining strategy. So that tells the operation how to move the tool as it's executing the operation. This is a very simple operation, a curve follow, but as you can see here, you have the option, even with a curve follow, to plunge and move to depth. And there are different strategies by which one can do this. One could do this using zigzag, so the tool moves to one end, drops down, and moves backwards. Or you can go one way, meaning that the tool goes in one direction, and then it lifts up, rapids, and then it repeats at a different depth. And then there's one other option here called concentric, which is shown here. So each tool type, each operation type, has a bunch of different toolpath styles that one has to follow. And you'll find a bunch of different tabs here depending on the operation. So in some cases, these can be fairly complicated. So to summarize, when you define an operation, you pick it from the toolbar, you select the program you want to insert, a tool change and the operation is added, and then you start on the second tab in the definition or input window. That tab allows you to define the geometry of the operation that's going to be performed, and then you move to the right, starting with the definition of or selection of the tool, the process parameters, the speeds and feeds of which the operation is going to be performed, lead-ins and lead-outs or approaches and retracts, and then finally you double back to the beginning and you define the machining strategy that you're going to use to execute the operation. In the next video, we'll actually jump in and actually go ahead and define an operation so that you can actually see how these steps are done in practice.